Emily found herself unexpectedly relocating to a remote Indiana farm for a new job, far from the city life she had known. Unaware of the sinister secrets tied to the property, she embarked on a journey into the unknown, where the peaceful rural setting masked a darker reality waiting to unfold. The GPS had been instructing me to turn left for the past 3 miles, yet all I saw were endless cornfields stretching in every direction until finally a gravel driveway appeared between 2 weathered fence posts. My Honda Civic jolted over the uneven stones, loaded to capacity with everything I owned crammed into the back seat and trunk. Moving across 3 states for a farm job wasn't the career trajectory I'd imagined, but student loans don't care about 5-year plans. The main farmhouse lay about 50 yards ahead, a 2-story structure with white siding long past its prime. Chickens roamed freely across the front yard, pecking at invisible insects in the packed dirt. Behind the house, I glimpsed the barn's red roof and a smaller building nestled among oak trees. I parked beside a pickup truck that looked like it had been around since the Clinton administration and turned off the engine. The summer heat hit me immediately as I opened the door, the thick humidity clinging to my shirt within seconds. Michigan summers were nothing compared to whatever inferno I'd blasted into here in rural Indiana. A voice approached from the barn's direction. "You must be Emily." Robert Mitchell greeted me, exactly as I'd pictured from our phone calls. His weathered face, well-worn work boots, and a deep tan earned from decades of outdoor labor. Though likely in his 70s, he moved with the steady confidence of someone seasoned by a lifetime of hard work. "That's me," I said, hoisting my largest duffel bag from the trunk. "We appreciate you starting right away," Robert said. "We've been needing the help." He motioned toward the smaller building I'd noticed earlier. "Let me show you to the cottage. You can settle in, and then we'll discuss the work schedule." The cottage turned out to be a converted garage or workshop, roughly 400 square feet. Robert unlocked the front door and stepped aside, letting me enter first. Inside, it was simple but tidy: a small kitchen area, a living room with a couch that had seen better days, and a doorway leading to what I assumed was the bedroom and bathroom. The previous owner used this as a guest house, Robert explained, his hand brushing the kitchen counter. "Margaret and I cleaned it up when we knew you were coming. Should have everything you need." I dropped my bag beside the couch and surveyed the space. It felt isolated but not unpleasant. From the kitchen window, I could see the main house about 30 yards away. "Perfect. Really good," I said. "I'll let you unpack," Robert offered, before he and I were interrupted by a new voice behind us. Margaret Mitchell stood in the doorway, holding a folded piece of paper. Her weathered features matched Robert's, but where his face bore the comfortable wear of labor, hers held a different kind of intensity. Her eyes swept over me with an assessment that urged me to straighten up. "Margaret, this is Emily Thompson." Robert introduced us. "Hello, dear," Margaret greeted, stepping into the cottage, though her expression remained serious. "I hope the drive wasn't too difficult." "Not bad at all. About 6 hours from Michigan." Margaret nodded, but didn't engage in small talk. Instead, she unfolded the paper she carried. "Before you get too comfortable, we need to go over some important safety guidelines." I glanced at Robert, who leaned against the kitchen counter. His posture suggested this was routine, but the way he avoided eye contact made my stomach tighten slightly. "Safety guidelines, rules, really," Margaret said, smoothing the paper on the kitchen table. Her handwriting covered the page in neat, careful script. "Living out here, especially in the cottage, requires following certain protocols." I moved closer to read over her shoulder. The list had 7 numbered items, written in blue ink. 1. At 2:17 a.m. exactly, a black dog will scratch at the back door. Let in immediately and feed it 1 can of tuna. Do not attempt to pet or interact with it beyond feeding. 2. Set your alarm for 3:03 a.m. Check that the barn door is securely closed. If it is open, call Robert immediately. Do not enter the barn alone. 3. If you hear 3 knocks at the front door anytime between 5 and 6 a.m., knock back 4 times. Wait for 1 return knock, then remain silent until sunrise. For when Robert works in the field at night, keep all lights off and do not look out the windows. 5. Never answer if you hear an old woman's voice calling for help from the basement of the main house. 6. Keep at least 6 cans of tuna in your refrigerator at all times. 7. If any of these rules are broken, notify Robert and Margaret immediately. I read through the list twice, waiting for a punchline. When I looked up, Robert and Margaret watched me expectantly, their expressions urging a serious response. Is this some kind of initiation? Like hazing for new farmhands? I asked. Margaret's face didn't waver. These rules exist for your safety, Emily. Following them exactly isn't a suggestion. I gestured to the paper. But a black dog at 2:17 a.m.? Specific knocking patterns? This feels like something from a horror movie. Robert cleared his throat. I know it sounds strange, but Margaret's right. We've had people work here before who thought they knew better. What happened to them? They left, Margaret replied quickly, but something in her tone made me feel that wasn't the whole story. The important thing is that you understand how serious this is, she continued. Living in the cottage means accepting certain responsibilities. I glanced between them. Robert seemed uneasy but determined, while Margaret's gaze held firm, unyielding to my skepticism. Rationally, I told myself this had to be some test, to see how I'd handle the odd instructions or whether I'd panic and quit on day 1. Okay, I said, folding the paper and slipping it into my pocket. I'll follow your rules. Margaret's shoulders relaxed just a bit. Good. Any questions? 1. What if nothing happens? What if no black dog shows up at 2:17? It will, Margaret said with unwavering certainty. But if for some reason it doesn't, still set your alarm for 3:03 and check the barn. Robert pushed off the counter. Why don't you get your things settled? We can talk about regular farm work over dinner. Upon settling into the modest, converted cottage on the Mitchell farm, Emily was introduced to a list that challenged all rational expectations. Margaret Mitchell, her intense gaze fixed upon Emily with unwavering seriousness, presented a set of peculiar guidelines, rules, rather, that governed life in the isolated dwelling. These instructions were unlike anything Emily had encountered in a workplace handbook, blending precise timing, mysterious rituals, and curious objects. The list began with the bewildering command to open the back door at exactly 2:17 a.m. to admit a black dog and feed it a single can of tuna, cautioning against any further interaction. Then came the necessity to set an alarm for 3:03 a.m. to ensure the barn door was locked, with strict orders to notify Robert immediately if it was ajar, never to enter the barn alone. Following this was the precise knocking ritual. If Emily heard 3 knocks between 5 and 6 a.m., she must reply with 4 knocks, await a single return knock, and then remain silent until sunrise. Additional rules forbade turning on lights or looking outside when Robert worked the fields at night, and commanded her never to respond if she heard an old woman's voice calling from the main house basement. Important, too, was the perpetual stockpiling of at least 6 cans of tuna in the refrigerator, emphasizing preparedness. Crucially, any lapse or deviation from these edicts required immediate notification to Robert and Margaret. Though Emily's skepticism was palpable, suspecting these were tests or pranks aimed at new hires, the unwavering gravity in her host's expressions conveyed these rules were no mere formality. The peculiar specificity and the weight behind each decree created a palpable tension, foreshadowing the strange and unsettling experiences yet to come on the farm. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the scratching began at the back door, slow, deliberate claws scraping against the wood in a steady rhythm that sent chills down my spine. I sat upright in bed, every muscle tense, trying to reason it out as just a raccoon or a farm cat, something natural appearing at precisely the time Margaret's list predicted. Summoning every ounce of courage, I got up, feet cold against the floor, and moved toward the kitchen where the noise persisted. The scratching ceased the moment I reached the door, leaving only silence and my rapid breathing. Peering through the small window, I saw a massive black dog waiting on the concrete step. Its fur was so dark it seemed to swallow the faint moonlight, and its yellow eyes locked with mine in a gaze so intelligent and unsettling that my stomach dropped. The creature pushed inside uninvited, filling the kitchen with an unnatural chill, and positioned itself centrally, never taking its eyes off me. Following the instructions, I shook as I retrieved a can of tuna from the refrigerator and pried it open, placing the tin on the floor as the dog continued to watch me. It ate with mechanical silence, no chewing sounds, no typical canine noise, while those piercing yellow eyes remained fixed on me. When it finally lay down, still alert and watchful, the cold in the room was palpable. Time seemed to crawl as we stared at one another until, abruptly at 2:45 a.m., the dog vanished, the temperature snapping back to normal. Left alone, I stared at the empty tuna can, my hands trembling. The encounter was no nightmare. The lingering scent of tuna and the evidence of what had happened confirmed its reality, and it changed everything I'd thought about this place and the strange rules I was supposed to follow. Following a restless first night filled with unsettling encounters, Emily wrestled with her disbelief over the bizarre farm rules. The black dog that faithfully appeared at 2:17 a.m. challenged her skepticism, affirming the reality of the strange protocols she had agreed to follow. Despite her doubts, the unsettling experiences marked the beginning of a mounting tension she could no longer ignore. As nights went on, the eerie occurrences escalated. The chilling visits from otherworldly figures, the unnerving sounds mimicking her hosts, and the ominous signs at the barn, all weaving a growing sense of danger. Emily found herself caught between disbelief and undeniable evidence, preparing mentally and physically for the coming nights that promised to test her resilience in ways she had never imagined. By the time Emily reached her fourth night at the farm, the weight of the strange rules had become all too real. The black dog had appeared once again, just as the terrible list had foretold, but this time, the ordeal was far more harrowing than before. Her hands trembled as she prepared the tuna. The creature's unnerving yellow eyes locked on her, filling the small kitchen with an unnatural chill that seemed to seep into her very bones. Despite her fear, she followed the instructions to the letter, yet the tension in the air was suffocating. When her 3:03 a.m. alarm rang, signaling the time for the barn door check, adrenaline still coursing through her veins, Emily found herself unable to move. The thought of stepping out into the dark yard, crossing the open space to the barn, overwhelmed her with panic. The earlier encounter with the dog had left her shaken beyond reason, and against her better judgment, she chose to ignore the alarm and retreated back into restless sleep. Morning felt surreal. The bright sunlight clashed with the shadow of dread that clung to her. At breakfast, both Robert and Margaret watched her with heavy concern. When she confessed to forgetting the crucial barn check, Robert's usual calm gave way to a gravitas that communicated the severity of her lapse. Margaret's voice, stern and cutting through Emily's apologies, made it clear. These rules were not mere suggestions, but the fragile threads holding her life together on this sinister property. Robert, darkened by worry, immediately set off to inspect the barn, the weight of the early morning chill and the cryptic warnings in the air pressing down on everyone. His return was slow, his exhaustion palpable as he confirmed the barn was securely closed, but his grim warning lingered. Emily had been lucky this time. Luck, however, was a luxury she might not have in the future. That day, Emily's mind churned with the chilling revelation that failing to adhere to the rules might summon consequences far worse than she'd imagined. The reality of the farm's secrets had begun to pierce through her skepticism, transforming a bizarre job into a terrifying battle where one misstep could prove deadly. Emily had endured enough night terrors on the farm to know this was no ordinary job. One evening, the veil of secrecy was lifted as Margaret and Robert finally shared the grim truth behind the farm's eerie rules and chilling rituals. They recounted the dark history that shadowed the Mitchell family for generations. It began with Robert's great-grandfather, who, many decades ago, stumbled upon something ancient and malevolent lurking in the land surrounding the farm. His attempts to confront and drive away these entities ended in tragedy. He vanished without a trace, leaving behind only neatly folded clothes on his bed, a haunting testament to the supernatural forces at play. Robert's grandfather had taken a different approach, choosing negotiation instead of confrontation. He forged a tenuous treaty with the enigmatic entities, a pact that demanded strict adherence to the farm's bizarre rules. These directives weren't mere folklore. They existed to contain and appease supernatural beings older than human memory, whose hunger was for chaos and whose presence defied natural law. The black dog at 2:17 a.m., the cryptic knocks, the forbidding barn at 3:03 a.m., and the voices from the basement were all manifestations of this shadowy collective consciousness tied to the property. Anyone who ignored or tried to alter the rules paid a dreadful price. Previous farm hands either fled in terror or met grim ends. A stark reminder that this was no ordinary farm, but a battleground where mortal life balanced precariously against ancient forces. Emily realized that her role was not simply about daily chores, but about maintaining a delicate truce that kept these malevolent entities bound, preventing them from spilling into the broader world. The stakes were higher than she ever imagined. A failure to comply could unleash horror far beyond this isolated Indiana farm. As the unsettling encounters multiplied, the sense of mounting pressure weighed heavily on me. Each night, the black dog's visits grew more intense, its presence more imposing, while the others lurking in the shadows appeared increasingly coordinated and deliberate. My compliance with the rules was no longer a simple exercise in obedience. It had become an urgent test of endurance and vigilance. The previous night's experiences had built a fragile familiarity, yet the deepening complexity unsettled my hard-won confidence. The protective measures I'd learned to follow so meticulously seemed to be challenged, the boundaries steadily eroding under persistent probing. The strange tricks and subtle shifts in behavior of the entities signaled to me that they recognized my growing awareness and resistance, and they were not pleased. I realized that my attempts to understand and adapt were perceived as defiance, threatening to destabilize the delicate equilibrium Robert and Margaret had maintained for decades. The challenge was not only about obeying the rules, but also about maintaining the balance between fear and familiarity, order and chaos. Any misstep could provoke consequences far graver than I had imagined. In that tense atmosphere, I found myself caught between the compulsion to comply and the necessity to prepare. The isolation deepened, shadows lengthened, and the responsibility I carried felt heavier by the hour. The farm was no longer just a workplace. It had become a battleground where the stakes were escalating beyond survival. They were about the fragile control of forces older and darker than I had ever confronted before. The night had settled heavily over the Mitchell farm as Emily prepared herself for what felt like an unending war between unseen forces and the fragile human defenses she guarded. Knowing now the gravity of her role, she donned the mantle not just of a worker, but a protector, charged with keeping dark entities confined within the farm's cursed boundaries. Her nights were punctuated by precise rituals, feeding the black dog that represented one of the malevolent presences, verifying the security of the barn whose doors sealed away ancient terrors, and responding to the cryptic knocks that echoed around the cottage. Each step was a vital part of a fragile truce long maintained by the Mitchell family. a delicate balance between their world and something far older and hungrier lurking just beyond sight. The last few nights had revealed unsettling changes. The creatures had grown bolder, their tactics more aggressive. The chilling presence of the black dog was no longer isolated. It arrived in pairs now, their fur absorbing light, their movements synchronized in unnatural harmony. Their silent, mechanical consumption of tuna carried an eerie rhythm, as if testing Emily's resolve, gauging her strength to maintain the uneasy peace. Emily's understanding had deepened. She learned to read the subtle signs of breach. Broken salt lines that once formed invisible wards now shattered. The barn doors forced open under impossible strength, and deceptive voices mimicking those she trusted, attempting to lure her into danger. But she adapted, reinforcing barriers with salt and iron stakes, and incorporating new protocols shared by Robert and Margaret. Each night was a battle, but she met it with growing courage and knowledge rather than paralyzing fear. The entities sought to exploit any hesitation, any faltering in the defenses. They prowled the perimeter with heavy, rhythmic footsteps that carved deliberate patterns, mapping, learning, and testing. Their uncanny ability to mimic voices and movements unsettled Emily deeply. Yet she remained steadfast, warding off their manipulations by retreating into the haven of the cottage's most secure room when needed. Despite exhaustion that clawed at her mind and body, Emily's resolve solidified into something fierce and unyielding. She was no longer a mere observer, but a guardian engaged in a continuous struggle, a human sentinel standing between a peaceful rural landscape and the horrors that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. In the heart of the night, as the cold crept through the walls and the black dogs appeared once again at their appointed time, Emily faced the darkness with iron will. Each ritual, each precautionary measure, was not merely survival. It was a battle to maintain a balance older and more vital than she had ever imagined. The war for the farm's soul raged silently under the moonlight, and Emily was determined to not only endure it, but to hold the line against the encroaching shadows. As darkness descended on the farm for the sixth night, Emily moved with a new sense of purpose. No longer just a newcomer caught in a web of unnerving rules, she had transformed into a vigilant guardian, fully aware of the dire responsibilities resting on her shoulders. The cottage, once a mere shelter, now felt like a bastion against forces that defied logic and threatened far beyond this isolated Indiana farm. She meticulously arranged the cans of tuna, ensuring they were within easy reach, and set multiple alarms, all precise and unyielding to error. The additional safeguards Margaret had taught her fortified the boundaries she was charged with protecting. Robert's emergency equipment also stood ready, a silent testament to the ongoing battle waged in shadows. Emily's mind was steady despite the cold chill that would soon seep through the walls. She was no longer paralyzed by fear. Instead, she was resolute. Every creak, every silence, every knock outside was no longer a source of panic, but a call to attention. Inside the reinforced walls, she prepared herself for the arrival at 2:17 a.m. when the black dog would come. She knew this encounter was not a random act of terror, but a critical test of the fragile treaty keeping ancient, malevolent entities at bay. Her role was pivotal, to hold the line between the normal world and a realm best left undisturbed. Tonight, the farm was not just an outdated homestead, but a front line in an unseen war. Emily was its steadfast protector, ready to face whatever horrors emerged with courage forged in understanding and determination. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was her resolve. This was no longer simply a job. It was a mission to preserve the balance and keep the darkness contained within the boundaries where it belonged. Emily's journey transforms her from a newcomer unsure of what to expect into a determined guardian, fully aware of the grave responsibility she now carries. This isolated farm, hidden beneath the guise of ordinary rural life, is a battleground where dark forces are kept at bay through rigorous rules and time-tested rituals. Her experience underscores the critical importance of vigilance and strict adherence to these rules to maintain the delicate balance between worlds. Ultimately, Emily stands as the vital barrier preventing supernatural horrors from spilling into the wider world, embracing her role not just as a worker, but as the protector of a fragile truce forged through generations. If you found this story intriguing, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share your thoughts.